Good day, everyone. Welcome to our podcast workshop. I am Haizelle and Resma, and today we are going to talk about an important topic in education, the curriculum development models. In this podcast, we will discuss different curriculum models, understand how they are different from one another, and most importantly, focus on the standard-based curriculum development model, which we can apply in our educational setting. So, let's get started. First, what is a curriculum model? A curriculum development model is basically a framework or roadmap that guides educators in planning, developing, implementing, and evaluating a curriculum. It helps us answer important questions such as what should students learn? Why should they learn it? How should we teach it? And how we will know if learning actually happened. Curriculum models are important because they help make curriculum planning more organized, systematic, and aligned with the needs of learners. However, there is no single curriculum model that is perfect for every situation. Different models have different strengths, and educators may adapt or combine approaches depending on the learner's subject, educational goals, and context. So, let us begin with Tyler's rational linear model. Tyler's model is one of the most well-known curriculum development models. It follows a logical sequence. It asks four major questions. First, what educational purposes should the school seek to attain? Second, what learning experiences can be provided to achieve these purposes? Third, how can these learning experiences be effectively organized? And fourth, how can we determine whether the purposes have been achieved? So in simple terms, Tyler models follows this flow. We have objectives, learning experiences, organization, and evaluation. One strength of this model is that it provides clear direction and alignment. However, one limitation is that it can sometimes appear too linear because curriculum development is not always a straight process. Next is TABA's grassroots or inductive model. Unlike a top-down approach, TABA emphasizes the participation of teachers in curriculum development. The model starts with the diagnosis of learners' needs. After identifying the needs, teachers develop objectives, select and organize content, select learning experiences, organize learning activities, and finally, evaluate the curriculum. The important idea here is that teachers are not simply implementers of curriculum. They can also be active curriculum developers. This model is especially useful because teachers directly understand the needs, the abilities, and the challenges of their learners. The third model is Wheeler's cyclical model. The main feature of Wheeler's model is that curriculum development is viewed as a continuous cycle. It involves aims and objectives, learning experiences, content, organization and integration, and last is evaluation. The important thing about this model is that evaluation does not simply happen at the end. Instead, the results of evaluation can be used to improve earlier curriculum decisions. This makes the model more flexible and suitable for continuous improvement. Another model is Keir's model. Keir viewed curriculum development as involving several interrelated elements. This includes objectives, knowledge, learning experiences, and evaluation. The important idea is that these elements are connected. For example, our objectives should be influence the knowledge we select, the learning experiences we provide, and the way we assess students. Therefore, curriculum development should not treat each element separately. Now, we come to the most important part of our discussion, the standard-based curriculum development model. A standard-based approach begins with a clearly identified standards, competencies, or expected learning outcomes. In simple words, we first ask, what should learners know, understand, or be able to do? After identifying the standard, we determine what evidence will show that students have to achieve it. Then, we design learning experiences and instruction that will help students reach the standard. The process can be summarized as identifying the standards, unpack the standards, design aligned assessment, plan learning experiences, collect evidence, and improve. This approach emphasizes alignment. The curriculum, instructions, assessment, and expected learning outcomes should all be connected. Why is it standard-based curriculum important? Or why is this model important? First, it gives teachers and learners a clear target. When students know what they are expected to learn, they have a clearer direction. Second, it helps teachers design appropriate assessments. Instead of creating an assessment that is unrelated to the lesson, teachers can ask, what evidence will show that my students achieve the standard? Third, it helps ensure that teaching activities are meaningful. We should not simply ask, what activity can I give to my students? Instead, we should ask, what learning activity will help my students achieve the intended standard? This is one of the most important ideas in standard-based curriculum development. Let us now apply the standard-based curriculum development model to a simple classroom example. Suppose we have a learning standard that expects students to explain a concept, use evidence, and apply the concept to a real-world situation. First, we identify the standard. Second, we unpack it. We identify the knowledge and skills that students need. For example, students may need to understand the concept, explain it correctly, use evidence, and apply their understanding. Third, we decide what evidence we need. We could use a short written response, a performance task, or a presentation with a rubric. Fourth, we plan the learning experiences. Students can begin by activating their prior knowledge. Then the teacher can provide an example or model, followed by guided practice, collaborative activities, feedback, and finally, independent application. Finally, we examine the evidence. Did the students achieve the standard? What misconceptions do they have? Who needs additional support? And what should we change in our instruction? So this shows that assessment is not simply the final step. It also provides information that helps us improve teaching and curriculum planning. The standard-based approach is also relevant to the Philippine educational context. In our content or current curriculum materials, we encounter concepts such as content standards, performance standards, and learning competencies. These provide teachers with clearer expectation of what learners should know and be able to demonstrate. This means that when teachers plan their lessons, they should not simply focus on completing activities. Instead, they should make sure that the activities and assessments are connected to the intended competencies and standards. For example, if the competency requires students to analyze information, then the assessment should provide an opportunity for students to actually analyze information. It would not be enough to ask them only to memorize the definition. This is the importance of curriculum alignment. Now, let us move to our workshop activity. For this activity, participants will choose one curriculum standard or learning competency. After choosing the standard, they will create a simple alignment map. The alignment map will contain 5 parts. First, standard. What should students know or be able to do? Second is the evidence. How will we know that the students achieve these standards? Third is the learning activity. What classroom activity will help students achieve the standard? Fourth is the feedback. How will the teacher help the students improve? And fifth is the revision. What will the teacher change based on the evidence collected? The goal of this activity is to show that curriculum development is not simply about creating activities. It is about making sure that the standard, the assessment, instruction, and evidence are aligned. After completing the workshop, I would like us to reflect on one important question. What changed when we started from the standard instead of starting from an activity? For me, the major realization is that teaching should have a clear purpose. Sometimes, teacher may begin with a question, what activity can I give my students today? But in a standards-based approach, we begin with what should my students learn and what evidence will show that they learned it. To summarize our discussion, we learned that curriculum development models provide different ways of planning and organizing curriculum. Tyler's model emphasizes objectives and logical sequence. Taba's model emphasizes teachers' and learners' needs. Wheeler's model emphasizes a continuous cycle. Keir's model emphasizes the relationship among different curriculum elements. We also discussed understanding by design, process models, and system approaches. But most important, we explored the standard-based curriculum development model. The main lesson is simple. Start with the expected learning, align the assessment and instruction with it, collect evidence, and use that evidence to improve learning. A good curriculum is not a simply collection of lessons and activities. It is a purposeful and aligned plan that helps learners achieve meaningful outcomes. Thank you for listening to our workshop podcast. Once again, I am Haizelle and Resma, and this has been our discussion on curriculum development models and the standard-based curriculum development models.